Hello, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn live event this Friday, where we're going to be looking at how AI and the earnings season are coming together and changing. Good to see everybody, and thank you for joining this LinkedIn live event. I'll introduce myself, then I'll introduce Alex and Mark. It's the second in a series of LinkedIn Lives that we've done regarding AI and equity research, or AI and investment management. And there'll be more to follow. What I would say as well is please ask questions throughout. There is a question comment box on the side. We'll get prompts going up just to remind you if you want to ask any questions on any of the specific points we raise or want to probe anything in further detail. Last time we had some really good questions, so please feel free to do that. My name's James Yerkes. I'm the former global head of wealth and private banking, foreign exchange and transactional banking for HSBC globally. In 26 markets around the world. Prior to that, I have a lot of background with Tesco's and Marks and Spencer Bank and other neobanks in the UK, where I set up and ran some of their wealth management businesses. Little claim to fame for me is that I was once part of the Royal Shakespeare Company and performed on stage with Kenneth Branagh in Shakespeare's Hamlet. I opened a door and closed a door, and that was my role. So from there, it's always been upwards, but there's a little bit claim to fame from me. We shan't be doing any Shakespeare today, much to my regret. And with that, I'll hand over to Alex Hoffman, who is the co-founder and CEO of Marvin Labs, who'll introduce himself and also a little fun fact about his history.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alex. As James said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Marvin Labs. I spent most of my career in investment banking, investing. I have a background successfully started and eventually sold an AI company in the logistics space. And together with a good friend of mine, Eugen, I founded Marvin Labs about a year ago. So fun fact about me, I'm an okay sailor, but I used to capsize a sailing boat in every of the world's major oceans.
Wow. I mean, was that accidentally or deliberately?
Well, some of that was deliberate because you train it, but most of it was you don't do this accidentally. You do this because you're very aggressively racing a sailboat. But yeah, it was accidental mostly than designed.
That's great. And then Mark, yourself, just to like to introduce yourself. I know you've got an interesting fact that I'm sure will become visible in a moment.
Yes, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I'm Mark Bolton. I have been in the investment banking space, or the banking space, for just over 30 years. James and I worked together many years ago. I've always been at the digital transformation and business transformation area. Worked on a lot of different projects for a number of clients, and I bounced between banks and consulting firms. So I've seen the industry both as poacher and as gamekeeper. James got me thinking about fun facts. The one I'm going to share is I'm in Tampa, Florida, which has been making the news pretty bad, quite a lot in the last couple of weeks. We've had 2 hurricanes come through. My house is right on the waterfront in Tampa Bay. We evacuated for a second time for Hurricane Milton, and I got back yesterday. No damage, just some mess in the yard to clean up. All good. So that's my fun fact.
Good stuff.
And you had a very popular TikTok about your preparations for the last hurricane, didn't you?
I do actually, yeah. I know it went viral, and I got over 2 million views. My fun fact next time will be my story about Steve Coogan and Matthew Broderick, who I worked with.
Well, we look forward to hearing that. Well, with this one, let's kick off with our first question. We've had several questions actually sent in to us regarding this topic in terms of AI and earnings season. I'll share it up on screen because we've got this technology now so that we can actually read the question, which is a big step forward, which is how are AI co-pilots changing the speed and depth of earnings report analysis for equity analysts? And I know we've got quite a lot of equity analysts and investment analysts on the call itself. And prior to this, sent us questions. Are there any specific challenges that they solve that traditional methods can't? And I'll come first of all to yourself, Alex, on that one, given obviously the inception of Marvin Labs.
Yeah. So maybe just a quick primer to the analysts that obviously know it, but also to the general audience. So earnings season is starting basically as of today. So we had the first the first of the bunch of regular quarter end reporters starting to publish earnings today. So we just seen JP Morgan. We've just seen BlackRock publish their earnings. They are traditionally the first out of the gate. They're very quick, and next week we're going to see first a bunch of financials. You usually see the banks kind of being done with by mid next week. So I think we have Goldman, Morgan Stanley reporting Tuesday and Wednesday, and a lot of the other US banks in particular are going to be out of the gate by this time. But basically all the financial sector has basically been finished by this time next week, and then we kind of start getting into the real economy. I think we have Apple next week, and then we have more and more earnings coming in. So earnings season is traditionally obviously a very busy time for analysts. It is where you're being bombarded by 2, 3, 4, depending on your coverage universe, companies reporting on the same day. They report in a bunch of different documents. So there's usually a press release, there's some earnings call, there is a filing. It's just a bunch of information. Some of that is new. Some of that is just repetitive information what companies shared before. But it is probably the organized point in time for every company where investors update their views. And what you do as an analyst, and I'm sure a lot of the analysts that are listening to us can attest to that, right? You're supposed to go through all the documents. You're supposed to listen to the earnings call and update your views on the company. And that is that can be very tough, because if you're on the sell side and you cover 10 companies, that might be you might have kind of enough insight and enough time to spend on each company. But if you're on the buy side and you're covering 30, 40 companies, it can be very, very difficult going through all these documents and just sussing out what's new and what isn't, what's interesting and what isn't in these reports. What we're doing with AI is basically going through these reports and sussing out what's new, what's relevant, what's interesting. So, I mean, a lot of people have started summarizing documents. I think there's a bit of an art to how to do this well. Another challenge is, I think in particular, if you look at some of the tech firms, just sussing out what is actually new information in this on this earnings call. If you listen to an NVIDIA earnings call, for example, NVIDIA typically announces like 10 to 15 different things during a quarter, and then they repeat that on the earnings call. And it's always very difficult to figure out what we knew before, because it's a press release, and particularly for companies that have kind of slightly more complicated product infrastructures, it's difficult figuring out what's new and what isn't. So what AI does is it just tells you that. It just tells you what's new and what's different. It's giving the analyst all the tools so they don't have to sit there at 2 a.m. Going through a report, high in caffeine, trying to figure out what's new and what's relevant.
I think that's a key point for me, on this question here that was asked about how AI co-pilots are changing the speed and depth of earnings, is that you mentioned it there, being up, burning the midnight oil, and then you get a lot of unstructured data, a lot of unstructured information, trying to just structure that within seconds or minutes of an earnings announcement and trying to make sense of that. That's for me a big game changer that AI brings, and particularly in the language space, compared to traditional approaches that maybe over the last decade, of humans having to do that, but with a lot of unstructured data.
And one of the interesting things is, because we're always asked kind of how quickly we do this. So we do all of this with Marvin Lab, and we're always asked, and people have this expectation that you do this in a sub-second space, because like people have learned, I think, that automated processing for anything in financial markets means you're high frequency, and high frequency means second or less. but I mean, one very interesting feature about a lot of earnings releases is they happen outside of traditional trading hours. So, while you might be able to trade some lower volumes in pre or after market sessions, if you're an institutional investor, you can't really shift your position much. Within a second's notice. So you have some time going through things. So the advantage of AI is a cost-saving one, but it's one where you have a bit of tolerance for latency, where you can, you don't have to do everything in sub-seconds, and that's what allows people until today to compete. But so we do a full stack of analysis typically within 15 to 20 minutes, and that's completely okay from what we tell our customers, that it's more important to kind of to have consistency in reporting, to actually catch the relevant things, than to be in an insane time frame. And I think one thing that AI, as of yet at least, isn't yet is incredibly fast.
Yeah.
So AI still operates on the minute basis rather than on a second basis.
Mark, what's your thoughts, given your experiences, also being in the US as well, where there's a significant market in terms of equity analysts, hedge funds, etc. What's your perspective on how AI co-pilots are changing the landscape for earnings seasons in particular?
I think there's a whole range of points that Alex made, but the key one I pick up on, and it leads into the question that we'll come to in a moment, is what Alex said around consistency in reporting. Any product that an analyst is using has to produce good quality output, and quality means consistent format, consistent timing, picking up on the key events, and skipping over or at least being able to prioritize between information in a report, in an earnings report, in a bulletin that's salient and important to a price, effectively moving the price of the stock, and the rest of the information that is kind of interesting but not that high priority. So there's a number of things going on in the industry around developing and finding tools like that. The biggest banks, as you'd expect to develop, are building their own products. Everyone knows that the huge JP Morgan spend numbers in the billions for their IT shop, and in this particular space in the hundreds of millions, ranging up towards $1 billion a year in AI-enabled investment analysis tooling. So that's happening. That's happening at the kind of the big tier one banks, the Wells Fargo, Citi, JP Morgan's, Bank of America, and so on. But further down the stack into tier 2 and tier 3, it's more of a challenge. And having kicked around this industry a long time, I've repeatedly seen banks love building their own tech, and it's not always the right way. In fact, invariably, it's not the right way. So what happens? There's a cycle that tends to take place is when a new technology comes into the industry, because there's not many products there, banks all start building their own things because that's the only option they have. But in AI, with AI-enabled investment analysis tools, it's different. There's already Marvin Labs and a range of products in the marketplace. You don't need to build your own. So I think, aside from a handful of top-tier banks, other banks are looking at what's on the marketplace, what works, what integrates, and doing a more traditional approach of what do we need, what products are out there to fit.
No, that's good. I mean, that actually leads nicely into the next question, which is about what are some of the key considerations for analysts when choosing the right tools to assist, kind of the earnings season sort of analysis. And Mark, I mean, that's obviously a nice follow-on from you there in terms of, we've had companies like Tesla and Google coming out previous earnings, the whole list goes from Amazon, Netflix, Nike, etc. What would you say to analysts on the call, the key considerations with AI tools in this space for earnings?
Yeah, it's the quality of the output. So that means is the tool helping you identify specific changes that have happened over the quarter that may move the stock, rather than just background news, background noise. Okay, that's probably a number one priority. Does it do that consistently, as Alex said, and as we just talked about previously? In other words, is it always on? Is it always on listening mode, which it should be 24/7? It's looking for news stories that are coming out of Asia overnight that may move the stock price, that may move the marketplace. Is it presenting information in an easily digestible manner so that the analysts can get their head around it quickly and easily and make some assessment of the impact on the future prospects of earnings, future prospects of the stock direction for the stock? And I think those are the really big ones. I think there's a whole slew of other ones, both in the kind of what I call the functional space that the analysts would care about, and then there's a ton of stuff that the IT people will care about. Security, integration, and all of those kind of things. And I don't want to go through those because that's a shopping list, and it's not really the audience for this call. I think we've all spent time in that space. We've either done it or we've helped companies make software selection decisions, and there's an awful lot that goes into the kind of the middle and back end type decisioning around integration and so on.
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, I'll let you come back to that in a second, James. But I think this scanning the market and seeing what's out there before you decide to indulge yourselves and build some system internally is really important. And what I'm seeing in the industry is that companies start playing with AI, and it's cheap and inexpensive, and they set up something for ChatGPT, and they put a RAG layer in between for security, which is it stands for retrieval augmentation. Retrieval augmented generation. I'm sorry, get that right. It's a long. But essentially, it's a layer that sits between the user at the front, the analyst at the front, and one of the generic AI engines at the back, whether it's Chat or Gemini or anything else, and it makes it more specific. You can do that very quickly and easily, but scaling it becomes very expensive. And these projects we're seeing a lot of concern in the industry around projects going way out of control in terms of size and duration, being able to take something that was a little prototype and scale it up. So that's a big issue for all banks to consider and analysts to think about as well. Yeah. So yeah, James.
No, I think that's good. What about you, Alex, from a slightly different perspective? Obviously, the inception of Marvin Labs as an AI tool itself in terms of equity research analysis. What's your perspective on this? About what are the key considerations, for a tool, an AI tool like Marvin Labs?
Yeah, I think everybody that is kind of serious about start using an AI tool in this space, you need to actually play around with the tool. You need to kind of have unassisted time with the tool. Because one of the features that AI is kind of notorious for is you can have incredibly great results if you just play around with the prompt, play around with your infrastructure for way too long. So your AI demos incredibly well because you have a selected example, and that example does exactly what you want it to do. But scaling beyond the example is incredibly difficult. Yep. It's not impossible. I mean, one of the nice things about AI is that it's no longer impossible, but it's incredibly difficult. And that's why you need to play around with it in the wild. That's why you actually need to run some analysis with any tool that you're looking to apply. Because it's so easy to be drawn into this perfectly well-designed example that people use in a demo. And I think the other thing that you need to take care of is, and it's kind of, it sounds a bit odd, but you need the AI to kind of take you as the user of it serious. And maybe I explain in a second about what I mean by that is, so like, we are all analysts, we are all kind of following. We have an in-depth knowledge of the companies we follow. We are not the typical like people that want to learn something about Tesla, about Apple, about NVIDIA. we're not going to, ChatGPT and asking, tell me what NVIDIA does, or tell me what Apple does. That's not who we are. I mean, a lot of people on this call probably have dedicated 10, 20 years of their career following an industry. There are probably people that follow the same company for 20, 30 years. So you are almost by definition have a different view on the company than a random user popping up on ChatGPT's interface. And what I mean with AI taking you serious is you don't want AI to tell you stuff you already know. You don't want AI to spit out Apple produces an iPhone. You want to know, hey, here's the new operating system of the iPhone. Here's what the company says about the upgrading cycle in their most recent call. You want to have specific information, not commonplace things that you already know because you're an expert. And I think that's something that a lot of people get wrong if they have a very thin layer over a ChatGPT system, because ChatGPT is designed for a wider audience, and you need to be very serious. You think about, how do I make the system work for my specialist knowledge base?
Yeah, I think that, but that's an interesting point about specialist knowledge base, because that's where for myself, having been in a global bank and been around global markets and what we did within the investment banking side, the ability to go deep into a sector and build a specialism becomes, again, I think, an important consideration with AI tools, because it's okay to do hundreds and hundreds of companies, but actually over time, the depth and knowledge of focusing on one particular sector, an AI tool that can do that. I mean, if it's assessing earnings seasons multiple times over multiple years, it will build up that level of depth that really makes it sector specific and much more valuable, again, than a human having to do that and build up that expertise over time, which takes obviously a lot longer and a much higher cost to do that. So I think any AI platform for me, an AI tool that can gather that expertise, that's sector focused, I think is critical. I think the other bit I have is the quality of the tools now behind it, the machine learning, etc. It's evolving incredibly fast, and the quality of the tools, gone are the days where it's just word counting to see what words are popping up and how many words. The tools now, and machine learning sitting behind it, I think are far more advanced, than they were beforehand. Which sort of like leads us, I guess, nicely into the next question, which is sort of more about practical examples here. I mean, I've been in global banks, as Mark and yourself as well with Credit Suisse. How have we got examples where we can sort of highlight to people, because we know we're working with firms with Marvin Labs, how firms that use AI co-pilots, almost outperform their peers, either from a cost save perspective or enhancing their forecasting models. What are your thoughts on that, Alex?
Yeah, so we've recently introduced a new feature, which is all about giving people a perspective behind the numbers. And we come from this we talk to a lot of users, and they all say, right, one of the first things that I always do if I do update my model is I update the numbers, and then I'm looking for, hey, why has the revenue number changed by this number? Why has my margin changed by that? Why is my P&L changed by this? And you wanna figure out what's the story behind these numbers. So what's the company telling us? Hey, my revenue is up 5%. That is due to X, Y, and Z. And doing that at scale across time, so you don't forget what the company's reasoning was last quarter. You don't forget what the main competitor's reason was that quarter. Right? It's always like it would be weird if one company says, right, we have massive volumes, and another one says we have massive price effects in our revenue. So this is a very tangible way of using AI to just figure out what's the story behind my numbers moving. and just being able to do these kind of qualitative analyses at scale effectively, and at scale across time for the same company, but also kind of vertically across companies, is a massive game changer. That's something if you really wanted to, right, you could do this. Like, this is nothing that is beyond the realm of possibility for a human to do, but that's a day's work, just making that work for one company. And that is a luxury that most of us that are sitting in an analyst seat don't have. So I think that's a good way of, that's a good practical example of something AI allows you to do, that you just practically can't do, and obviously having this insight is incredibly helpful, and it's incredibly meaningful to help you figure out, is this a sustainable uplift in revenue, or is this not a sustainable uplift in revenue? How can I read across to the company reporting tomorrow? So it gives me a lot more perspective than just looking at the highlight numbers.
No, I think that's key. And I think there's also, you could look at it in a slightly different angle as well, is that companies that are using AI co-pilots are making, productivity cost saves in the sense of time, and that's going straight through as well. So you get the double benefit of, not only does it enhance the forecasting models and the analysis, it's actually doing it in a way that everyone's under cost pressure, particularly now interest rates look like they're falling, and net interest income is going to be falling in terms of benefit to the banking sector. So the cost pressures will no doubt rear up again off the back of that. Mark, I mean, you've lived through many cost exercises. You've delivered many yourself as well, but it'd be good to get your perspective on firms that use AI co-pilots. How does it help them outperform, and any examples you can think of?
Well, I think this is becoming a productivity story rather than a cost story, actually, James, pretty quickly. And the take up of AI tool usage in the industry has been rapid. And if you're one of the rare companies now that are not using AI-enabled tools, AI co-pilot tools that are specifically designed for the industry, then you risk falling behind. And falling behind in terms of productivity in particular. So again, picking up on what Alex has said, it's not just the depth, it's not just the breadth of coverage of the companies that you're covering, but it's the depth of coverage. And one of the things that AI brings to the table, again, Alex has said this, is it has the memory that sometimes we don't. It knows what happened 8 quarters ago that relates to the current news item that's just popped up in the overnight from Singapore. It's got that available to it, and it can relate those things together. And as Alex said, produce a story around why that is a earnings moving piece of information, earnings moving news item. So this really is about, it's really about a productivity and a quality story. And anyone who's not seriously looking at investing in the right tooling it risks being left behind pretty quickly, because this is very fast moving.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And so we wrote a little article a few weeks back, just trying to quantify the cost savings after talking to a bunch of industry insiders. And like, we came up with, like, there's probably an efficiency gain in the region of 40 to 50% from AI overall. When we think about half of that is just dealing with unstructured information, making unstructured information, in some way, shape, or form accessible, right? And this is a lot what we're talking about here today, right? This is about correlating the news 8 quarters ago with the news flow. This is looking through numbers, those kind of things. But there's also kind of a different story, a second story, which is probably the other half of the efficiency gains, which is just hypercharged automation. So this is the dreams that we all had, and automating things that in the teens that just weren't possible. Automate model updates, generate models generate financial models with prompt, like all these low value added activities that you have as an analyst that you just need to get right, but that like really building a three-statement model that balances, that is kind of plain vanilla. That's not a terribly value-added task. But it's an important one that you need to get right. And AI kind of has some role to play there as well. Updating your model for the newest numbers coming out of an earnings release. It's not terribly value-added, but you need to do it. You need to do it right. And it's kind of slightly more complicated than automation that we were able to do 3 years ago. So there's another kind of layer to this, which is just supercharged automation that because we are looking more at this unstructured to structured transformation, kind of tend to gloss over. But I think that's another layer for people to think about, right? I mean, what can I do? What is it that I wanted to do 5 years ago in terms of automation for my analysts that I now can realistically do that I couldn't 5 years ago?
Yeah, and particularly around, as you say, with the earnings season, with the condensed nature of many of the earnings statements, there are companies that obviously some people are more interested than others. And that in itself brings a workload challenge that condenses around that. I think that ties to the sort of next question, which is a bit of a human. We've talked a lot about obviously AI, artificial intelligence, but the human element in equity analysis, especially around earnings seasons. Again, do analysts risk becoming too reliant on AI so that it begins to water down the human element, or actually it's more about, as is described often, the co-pilot concept, which is about enhancing judgment and strategic thinking, not replacing it per se. So, Mark, what do you think? Because you've done an awful lot actually on behavioural psychology in this space as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So again, just to pick up the thread from the previous couple of questions, this to me is an augmentation, not a replacement story. I'm not seeing or hearing that banks are, having wholesale clear outs of their equity analyst team or anything like that. That's just not happening. And obviously these are key professionals in the organization that add a lot of value, and the stability of an equity analyst team within a big bank is really, really important for continuity and stability. So that's not really happening. So what is happening is that as tools are getting adopted, there's an expectation around increased productivity. So deeper analysis, a little faster analysis for sure, possibly broader coverage, adding one or two more stocks to what's already on an analyst plate. Those are the kinds of things that we're seeing, and the co-pilot tools that support that are the ones that are becoming most important in the industry. Do analysts risk becoming too reliant on AI? I don't think so. I think this is like, when we move to streaming market data and streaming prices, rather than reading stock prices in the back of the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times, it's just another technological move, and we'll adapt to it really fast. So I don't think there's any particular reliance here, and I'm not concerned about that, and I'm not hearing anything about that.
No.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think you're right. I mean, I think for me, it's the low value tasks can be stripped away, because it's just like the way AI is being used in writing and and content. It's stripping away low value tasks that then in some ways frees up the analyst to then really use the intuition and really use the specialisms they've got, not being bogged down with 50% of the task being a repetitive low value but high activity piece. That's where AI, I think, shortcuts a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely right. That's exactly, that was another point I was going to come on to. It creates a space for analysts to be more strategic and deeper in their thinking without doing a lot of the, as you say, the repetitive data gathering, data analysis, model creation, model update, all of that. A lot of that, not all of it, a lot of it can now be taken care of by AI. And so it leaves the analysts much more free to be able to think about what does this mean? What's the story behind it? What's really going on at the company that's driving earnings in this direction, driving stock in this direction? And just one other thing, I think I don't know, I'm not sure. Okay, so this isn't based on empirical evidence, but I have a suspicion that there might be potential for a bit of improvement in work-life balance, particularly analysts who are covering really big global stocks, because some of the heavy lifting in the follow the sun other time zone model can now probably get done in the background by AI, so that when the analyst does sit down and concentrate, it's a more focused, higher quality thinking period, rather than God, I've just got to check the prices at midnight before I fall asleep, and then check them again at 5:30 a.m. and see if anything newsworthy broke on the wire. That's never quite going to go away, but I think AI can take some of that kind of heavy lifting away and some of that repetitive work away, and provide the analysts a bit more space and time to be high.
I think it's probably a good point to bring you in as well, Alex, in the sense of, whilst I don't wish to lead the witness, the AI impacting humans in a positive way in this space is something I imagine that was very much at the heart of the inception of Marvin Labs.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, everybody that has ever worked in finance has worked late hours and done stuff. And I think there's nothing worse than updating an Excel spreadsheet at 2 a.m. To copy something into a PowerPoint presentation, and just do kind of low value tasks. And I think most people don't mind doing like high value add, creative, interesting work at late hours, but doing busy work at late hours is really, really frustrating. And I think if you can get some of that busy work out, you already helped. I think it's on some level a bit. A job in finance will never have the same work-life balance than a job in other parts of the industry. But if we at least have people do interesting, creative, challenging stuff while they're kind of suffering through their work-life balance, it's I hope at least it's better than doing monkey work on an Excel spreadsheet.
No, I think that's good. I mean, actually, I quite like you if you could, Alex. I know you talk a lot about the common inference, and the model for that. Just to sort of bring to life that a little bit, because I think that ability to almost look for common thing, common analysis, and that can help shortcut time, which again, from a human element in terms of equity analysis, is a real positive. If you could just talk through that concept, because I think it's one people are beginning to get to grips with in terms of the equity analyst space.
Yeah. So whenever we are being asked kind of how to describe how our model works and how our model potentially differs from others, our AI approach works by effectively mimicking how people learn stuff from new information. So what we've done is we've coined this term of a common ground, which is a concept from linguistics, which is effectively just a big pile of all the information that we have at a given point in time. And how humans learn, as how we taught our computer learners, you read a document. Say you read the annual report of Apple from 2018, you store all that somewhere in your brain, and the computer puts all of that on a pile and can recall it. Then you read the next document, and you're updating your pile, because in the next document there might be new information. There almost definitely is new information. There almost definitely is some information that contradicts the information that you have on your pile, and there's something that is kind of the same information. There's just a repetition. And finance documents, one of the features of finance documents, that there's a lot of repetition, right? The overall annual report of a company doesn't change terribly much between years, at least in terms of its core content. So what we've basically taught a computer is, start 5 years ago, start with document one, with the first document that you find. Just read it, put everything on a pile, then go to the chronologically next document, read that document, extract all the facts, and then just compare. Is this new information? Is this conflicting information? Or is this old information? And if you do this kind of for long enough, you are at the stage where you have a good knowledge base about the company. And then what you do with a new document, right? What you do with the JP Morgan earnings call that happened 2 hours ago is you look at your JP Morgan pile, you look at this, at all the new information that come in, and you just compare. And what we then effectively doing is we're telling analysts, hey, here is this new thing that comes in that we didn't know about before. Here's this thing that is contradictory to something that was there before. And all the other stuff, all the stuff that is old information, just ignore it because we already know about it. I think that's a very powerful way of thinking through this, because this is like incremental learning, and this is how we, in particular, we as experts, kind of learn from things and look at things.
I think that's a very good point about the comparison and sifting out the things that are repeated and therefore not needed in the sense of the analysis at that point. Because if you think about CEO statements, which have been around, many of those, it's a heck of a job to actually try and work out, because every one of them is going to be by and large positive about where progress is. But actually, if you flip back several years, you suddenly find that actually, yes, the wealth business was meant to be a lot bigger than it is now, even though it's still amazing success now with the numbers, but they're half of where it said it would be 3 years ago. Actually to do that at the human level, whereas AI is difficult, whereas I see AI enhances that, especially with statements that people make over time. And if I was sitting in an earnings call and listening and then being able to cross-reference in minutes what someone might have said years ago, we know ourselves how it goes, that everyone is talking everything up predominantly, but that may not be the accurate picture versus maybe the landscape a couple of years ago. What do you think as well, Mark, on that one?
I do. That's exactly the point we made earlier, which is that AI has that memory, right? Or at least the tools can scrape back through the history of announcements, earnings, press releases, news stories, and go, hold on, as Alex has said, there's something contradictory here. Why is this contradictory? While ignoring the irrelevant stuff that we already know, that Apple makes iPhones. But we're hearing stories. If there were stories in the press that Apple says the upgrade path for the latest iOS is really smooth, and yet there are new stories running in Australia that's not the case. AI, a good AI tool will pick that up and say, hey, there appears to be a contradiction between what we're hearing in the press here and what Apple themselves are saying. Flag analysts, take a look at this. So yeah, that's absolutely a good use of the tooling.
I mean, there's a very prominent example that happened yesterday, right? I mean, I'm sure some people have stayed up late and watched Elon Musk present the robotaxi and like all his technology around it that is coming now in 2027. And if you go back for Elon Musk's statements, and like we've done this before, and it's just a very funny exercise, and a lot of journalists have done that in like quite a lot of legwork, is like he's been talking about this full self-driving technology being around the corner for the last 10 years. And it's always a year or two away. And it's like it's such an obvious thing with Tesla that it's like everybody is aware of. And I think there are a lot of things that are positive and negative about Elon Musk, but like I don't think anybody takes his predictions about the future, about the near-term and mid-term future, that serious. But if you're the manager if you're the CEO of a chemicals company, and you're promising that your factory is up next year, and you've been doing this for 5 years, right? You want your investors should hold you accountable of that, and it's I think this is one of the very important things that AI allows you to do, is you can you can kind of keep track of all of these promises that companies make. I see we lost James.
I think he's... James, did you drop off? You've just gone on. Yeah, okay. Let's have a technical error at that end. Okay.
It's just us. There we have him back again.
Just join back in. Hey, James. The fun of being live TV. That's what
I know. I think he was just looking at Elon's presentation from yesterday, which is...
no, can you hear me now? There was a slight glitch on the power here there. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, you're all good, James. You're fully back.
Yeah. That's recovery. That's what the Royal Shakespeare Company gave me, the ability to be able to open and close a door on stage. And even if I fluffed it, it was still okay. The door still closed and was able to open again. It was something that stayed with me for a very long time. But I think that piece about the human side, I think that the other question for us is also a question about what limitations are there. We've talked a lot about the positives, in terms of filtering things out. We've talked about being able to almost have, you said, that omniscient memory kind of thing. But what are potential risks or limitations? Because it's not all positive, or there's certainly many people have concerns about risks and limitations, particularly in terms of how do you avoid blind spots that maybe people aren't aware of. Alex, what's your thought on potential risks of using AI co-pilots in equity research?
Yeah, so I think the biggest risk is if you are if you're not careful about designing your co-pilot. So I mean, hallucination is kind of one of these traditional risk factors that I think once you start any conversation about AI, like people will just say about AI that does something kind of meaningful. Like people will talk about hallucination and not realizing that kind of for any meaningful application, that is more or less the solved problem, right? I mean, you can design AI pipelines in a way that hallucinations at least aren't a reasonable issue anymore. So I think you need to be very careful around designing your AI flows, and that takes some knowledge, that takes some experience, that takes some practice, and that to me is one of the big things whenever we are hearing in organizations that try to do the AI, that try to go the AI route by themselves, that they underestimate, because there's more to AI than just querying ChatGPT for random stuff. But there will always be residual risk that you're missing something. But there's also a residual risk if you're kind of going onto your terminal or onto your data provider and look for Microsoft's revenue number 3 years ago, that number is wrong, right? There's a residual risk in that. But I mean, in most instances, we'll get AI to a state where this is such a rare occurrence, just as the quantitative side is at that level of fidelity, that's such a rare occurrence that you can almost rely on these numbers.
Yeah,
I want to say something on this, James. I
did
a piece of strategy work with some consulting colleagues, and we looked carefully at some of these risks that Alex is talking about. And there are a number of tools now that have come to market that specifically deal with a whole range of risks. So they will look at, for example, bias and fact checking. They'll look at bias in prompt, okay, in the ingoing prompt. They'll look bias in the output. They'll also do cross fact checking as well in output. So, for example, that example you gave, Alex, was really good, of a checkable published Microsoft performance number from 3 years ago is something you can just cross-check, and multiple places you can cross-check that. So there are tools that will do that as part of the query process, and then these tools themselves also create and learn and create a database of common repeated problems, and they create their own sort of vector storage of of risks that they've seen before, and they get better and better, and you can customize them as well. And there are a number of these tools now that are focused on financial services. So you can either buy them and bolt them on, or you can integrate them into your product in that RAG layer. There's as Alex said, these are solvable problems now, and one tool in particular I'm familiar with, it eradicates 80 to 85% of all of these kind of known problems of bias, of fact checking, and those kinds of things.
I mean, that's a significant piece. I mean, which I suppose leads to the sort of final couple of questions that we had in. This one was a question that was sent to me as well about. I mean, even looking 1 to 3 years might seem incredibly long in this space, when you look at the speed of advancements. But I thought, thinking about specifically the earnings seasons analysis, how could you see that evolving, Alex, maybe over the next 1 to 3 years? Because you do wonder the extent to which the firms that are obviously giving their earnings, at some point they themselves are utilizing AI, and it almost becomes an arms race of the analysts compared to the companies. And how do you see AI in that space evolving? Is it going to be talking to itself, competing against itself, those kind of things?
I mean, this has happened before, right? This has happened when we, when everybody started using NLP in the 2010s, and companies learned of that. Executives just avoided certain words, right? I mean, there was already this arms race of, don't say negative words. That all of your old models have problems with double negation. So, rather say something is not positive is better than saying something is negative. People have started. People for the last 15 years, people did all of these silly things. So it's not kind of completely unheard of to have this arms race. I think what modern day Gen AI tech does is it avoids us having to play these games, because in the end it's the meaning, it's the actual fact that matters, right? It's the fact that something is positive or negative, not whether you call it positive or negative. And I think that's one of the nice things about kind of getting the discussion away from companies. So I think there are some obvious automation tasks, right? I mean, writing the notes after, in particular if you're sitting on the sell side, but also if you're sitting on the buy side, writing the research notes after earnings. I imagine, I've heard through the grapevine that some people are almost doing this in an automated way. I would be very surprised if not more people than owning up to that are doing it in a more or less automated way. And I think over the next 1 or 2 years, this will be almost an automated thing. And I think there will be kind of more instances than that. Where you automate some of the lower hanging fruits. And then, I mean, there's still a very exciting time to be in this industry, because it's to be kind of in this analytical space, because it's very hard to see what the next 2-3 years bring us. The continuous amount of advancement in the models, and how people apply the models, in just getting the conversion of a challenge that an investment analyst has to a solution right, and that still remains.
I think that's a good point, because I think even with, say, Marvin Labs, you introduced new features over the last couple of months. Some of you might want to just touch upon those briefly, but I mean, there's some really good new features, and that's in a period of months, let alone years from now, how earnings season analysis will be done. When you think about the tools and the developments that you'll be adding, on the runway.
Yeah. So I mean, for us, the big thing is to actually take earnings season as a focus point, and develop dedicated tools for it. I think that's the big realizations. That's one of the big realizations we had, because we originally started out kind of treating earnings season as just a bunch of documents coming in. but having dedicated tools, giving people the ability to prepare for earnings by getting a very high level summary of, okay, what are the company's peers done? What has the company done previously? So just thinking through and talking a lot with the industry, hearing kind of how people approach certain things and just building the right tools. I mean, fundamentally, it is still we're still a startup. So for us, it's always very important to, have the ear of an analyst, listen to them when they describe how they work, how they think about things, and then just taking that on board and building something that hopefully is useful to them.
I think it's valuable. Mark, do you want to just have the sort of final word on this, because we've just got a few minutes left in the LinkedIn Live event, and it's a good one to end on. What's your perspectives? Building what Alex said there.
I remember when I first joined the industry, and I joined Solomon Brothers, and I would pick up and read the analyst reports as earnings came out, and sometimes there'd be interim deep dive specials. And and I haven't looked at one for a few years, but I suspect the format hasn't changed that much. They consist of a number of parts, but the real value add part is when the managing director with them wand over it and reviewed the summary and the interpretation of what the data and facts underneath were really saying, what the story really is around where that company is going, as opposed to where it's been. And it's that forward-looking ability. And I don't see that being replaced by AI. All of the analysis leading up to it gets easier, faster, better, deeper, more consistent with AI tools. But then that ability to the magic fairy dust that the team sprinkles on that forward-looking view is really where the magic happens. And I don't see that being automated away anytime ever.
Investing is still a creative endeavor, right? I mean, it's like we're not going to take the human out of it. It's still, it challenges you creatively, it challenges you analytically, and it kind of challenges your understanding of the world and your view of how the world will work going forward. My light's giving up again.
Your glitter ball is back.
For those who weren't on the first LinkedIn Live event, Alex's light, it's not the police arriving at his house with a flashing light, it's actually his lights giving up on his laptop. So
this is probably a sign for me to stop talking.
It's his 3-minute warning.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, there's a sort of an AI piece creeping in here, isn't there? So you've been burning the midnight oil to read the earnings analysis at certain times for certain companies. So I think on that note, actually, it's a really good time to draw things to a close. To thank both of you for sharing your views, your perspectives, and your thoughts as industry experts and leaders, and say to the audience, we hope you found the last hour informative. If you have questions, obviously feel free to contact us, reach out to us on LinkedIn. Equally, visit Marvin Labs in terms of its website and try the app for yourselves. You'll be able to go on, assess a certain number of companies. Many of the big headline companies we've mentioned are on there and available for you to see it in action. So visit the Marvin Labs website and app. And also watch out for us on LinkedIn and social media. As the earnings season progresses and announcements do come out, then our analysis is up and on our social media sites incredibly quickly. So again, you may find that a value add to yourself to actually look at our analysis as it comes out straight and fresh. On that, I think Alex's light is about to give up. So I will wish you all a good weekend, and we will see you at the next Marvin Labs LinkedIn Live event, which will be in November. Thank you and have a good weekend.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.